50 years ago today, the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution gave women the right to vote. On this anniversary, a militant minority of women's liberationists was on the streets across the country to demand equal employment for women, care centers for mothers, child abortions for anyone who wants them, and general equality between women and men.
Unprecedented coalition of women that today called this strike to confront the unfinished business of our equality. Women young and old, women black and white, women students, women grandmothers who fought for the original right to vote, women Republicans, Democrats, socialists, young radical women, establishment women, rich women who know that all women are poor, housewives, professional women, women who are famous, but no woman makes it alone, and that's all women are equally free.
I suppose just the physical differences, and maybe the thought processes, but
biology. I don't know, it all comes down to biology, I think.
The thinking in the career in my country.
I mean, apart from like the actual physical differences of the body, I don't know, I think really all the differences are just cultural.
It's just too much to answer in one little response.
Okay. Men are very straightforward, women are not.
their bits, their perception of themselves as well.
Genitalia, that's about it. Yeah. So I had to think, what really was the difference? Just genitalia, that's about it.
A bit of biology, a bit of culture, a bit of socialisation. Probably not as many differences as people once might have thought, but still a few.
Throughout the entire European history, men would go out and have more opportunities to work and have pretty much a life of their own, whereas the women, it was expected of them to stay at home and do the house chores, take care of the family and things like that. Normally thought that the qualities strength and valor belong to men, to make them like, the dominant gender, and qualities tenderness and frailty belong to women, make them mothers, nurturers, in like many cases servants of men. The reason for this divided gender role, perhaps in Western European history, was probably because of Christian Judaism interpretation of the origins of man and woman. Adam was created in God's image, like in its entirety and everything, whereas Eve, the woman counterpart of Adam, was not in God's image but from his spare rib. She was coaxed by the snake into eating the red apple from the tree of knowledge, right? And because she did the forbidden thing, the one rule that she was not supposed to do. And I think because of that story, people have the interpretation that it was Eve, the woman's fault for getting kicked out and for having Adam kicked out as well. And because of this, society thinks that it should be the women who are obedient, subordinate to men. That idea continued to be carried throughout history up to the present age.
Despite history's seemingly ongoing trend of degrading women as being the inferior sex, the question regarding biological differences between men and women are somewhat become a taboo in modern society. The rise of feminism has induced a PC public sentiment that condemns any individual for insinuating that men are biologically superior to women. Although it is all well and good to adopt the mentality that men and women belong to the same species and are therefore equal, or that gender is a man-made social construct, it is impossible to deny that there are inherent biological features that differentiate men from women.
There is no unisex brain. So, we all start off, there we are up there. Now, if that sperm entering that egg, if that sperm is carrying an X, you will be female. If it's carrying a Y, you'll be male. And what that means is that at about 8 weeks of fetal life, so there's the fetus cooking away, at about 8 weeks of fetal life, the tiny testicles in the male start pumping out huge amounts of testosterone that marinates the brain and the body and changes it into the male brain. Now, if you're female, your brain develops unperturbed by testosterone.
But ultimately, what is the significance of these differences, and how do they determine the gender roles of both men and women? Interestingly enough, there are a number of biological features belonging to men and women that do not correspond with their respective gender roles. Dr. Brizardine explains that fathers-to-be usually experience a release of the hormone prolactin into the bloodstream, which is usually secreted in response to eating, ovulation, estrogen treatment, and nursing. Given that it is predominantly found in pregnant women, it is primarily responsible for enabling women to produce breast milk. Although it doesn't enable this function in men, it does induce what is known as daddy brain, less aggressive and more nurturing and maternal behaviour. Why are men branded by society as a provider when biological evidence demonstrates that they are just as capable of women as holding the caregiver position?
Well, the next thing that we need to address is how does all of this apply in today's society of the 21st century? And if the traditional roles of men and women in society are both different and valuable, do we acknowledge them both equally? And through the rise of feminism and the growing awareness of sexism, people might now ask, aren't men and women equal today? And I think it's here that we face fundamental problems with gender equality. For instance, if we look at remuneration in the workforce, there's a significant difference between male and female salaries. And the study of the wage gap or the gender pay gap can be analysed with data from the Australian Bureau of Statistics. And from a report in May 2013, women earned 82.5% of the average man's wage, and the figures have been consistent well into the early 90s. If you put both male and female full-time reports together, it's a little overwhelming. You can look at the result line by line per industry, and from healthcare to mining and the arts to construction, the data paints the same picture. The average man earns more than a woman. And we need to ask the question, frankly, are Australian women really being paid fairly?
I was offended when the Leader of the Opposition went outside in the front of Parliament and stood next to a sign that said, "Ditch the witch." I was offended when the Leader of the Opposition stood next to a sign that described me as a man's bitch. I was offended by those things. Misogyny, sexism, every day from this Leader of the Opposition.
The offensive Leader of the Opposition is now the Prime Minister of Australia in 2014. This really provokes two issues. So, language obviously, with things like "don't be a pussy" or "you're acting like a girl," and especially something like "a man's bitch," just adds to that image of women being subordinate to men. But another important factor is also the representation of women in leadership and managerial roles. Women make up 35.5% of leadership roles in the workforce. The Australian Bureau of Statistics also measures CEO diversity every 2 years from the top companies of the Australian Stock Exchange. The last report from 2012 showed that women occupied a mere 7 of these roles from the top 200 companies.
What is different? What is special? I, Barbara Jordan, am a keynote speaker. A lot of years passed since 1832, and during that time it would have been most unusual for any national political party to ask a Barbara Jordan to deliver a keynote address. But tonight, here I am. And I feel that notwithstanding the past, that my presence here is one additional bit of evidence that the American dream need not forever be deferred. We are attempting to fulfill our national purpose to create and sustain a society in which all of us are equal.
We've come far, but there's still a long way to go for the discussion to take place effectively on our society's expectations for men and women, and we haven't even begun to look at the gender issues facing other cultures or the difference between gender and sex. As it is now, everyone suffers. These differences we've mentioned have been used as justification by the people who continue to subordinate women and over-masculinise men. Instead, we should use this information to teach us to value each other's strengths and abilities, none of which are wholly confined to one sex or the other.
Difference between men and women? Fundamentally there is none. That's a socially constructed sort of idea of difference between men and women. At least that's what I think.
Men have short hair and women have long hair. Oh wait, no, I don't know.
I don't even know. Women got a lot of problems. I'm just kidding.
Nothing, just your physical, your biological functions and whatnot.